Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 9 of my Learn to Program series. In this part of the tutorial, we will learn about object-oriented programming with Python that will bestow upon you godlike powers to create pretty much anything you can imagine. However, if you have not watched the previous parts of this tutorial, you definitely should, because this is becoming a tutorial that is getting progressively more complex as it continues, and you may be lost. And I provide a link to all of the different videos in this series in this video right here on your screen. As well, you will find a transcript and all the code from this video in the description underneath the video. We'll start off by creating a simple dog, then a square, and then we will create two warriors that will fight until one is dead. So it should be fun, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so everybody thinks object-oriented programming is complicated whenever they first start out with it, but it really isn't. Just think about it. What we were creating are objects, and real-world objects all have two things. They have attributes and they have capabilities. Well, in object-oriented programming, you are just going to define these attributes and these capabilities. So let's use a dog, for example, because we will be creating a dog object. What attributes does a dog have? Well, a dog could have a height, it can have a weight, it can have a favorite food. What type of dog capabilities are there? Well, a dog would have the capability to run, to walk, to eat. Alright, so what we need to do is just define these attributes and capabilities. Now, the only thing that complicates this at all is inside of object-oriented programming, attributes are called fields. Yes, I know it's silly, and if I ever invent my own language, I will, instead of calling these fields, I will call these attributes. And the capabilities are called methods. Another name for methods is a function, which you've already seen functions, but we must call them methods because it's object-oriented programming. Also, fields are basically just variables, which you've also seen so far. So what we're going to do now is jump in here and we will create some dog objects. Now, a dog object is created from a template, and that template is called a class. And what will you do in these classes? You will define the attributes and capabilities of your dog object. And to create a class for your dog, you just type in class and dog with uppercase letters, and then you start defining. Now, whenever you first create a dog, there are probably some things that you would like to set, such as its name, its height, and its weight whenever it is first created. You will create these things in the init method, and we are going to define it just like we define all of our other different functions. And first off, what you're going to pass inside of here is self. Well, created it for me already. And you may be confused by self. Well, self just allows an object to refer to itself just like you would refer to yourself as my. So you would refer to my height, my weight, my favorite food. Self is exactly the same as that. Why would we use that? Well, we are going to be able to create very custom dogs, such as the dog Spot. Well, we are going to create Spot using the template or class that is defined here, but we must create the class before we name Spot. And this gets into the whole chicken or the egg sort of situation. We cannot create a Spot dog until we create a template that defines how to create dogs. Hence the use of the word self. So if you have any confusion about that, leave a question in the comment section. I answer all my comments, and I'll be happy to clear anything up you may have. What we're then going to do is to define what is going to be passed inside of here. I'm going to define defaults. So the name is going to be nothing if they don't pass anything into it. I'm basically setting it up like this just as a default so that we can create a dog without necessarily providing a height or a weight. And that is the reason why I put default values inside of there. Now what we need to do is say my or self name is going to be the name that they passed inside of here. Also, we're going to do the same thing for height, and self weight is going to be the weight that they passed inside of here. So we have also defined the attributes of our dog. Now we need to define some of its capabilities. And how we will do that is, remember, we wanted our dog to run, and we're going to define that, and self is inside of there. and we could do something like print the dog runs. And what we're going to do is then call format on this and get the dog's name. And how you do that is by using self and name. And we can create a whole bunch of these different guys. Let's also give the dog the capability to be able to come in here and eat. And if it had a favorite food defined inside of here, it would be able to say it ate that. But I'm just going to say the dog eats. And then we could come in also and say that the dog is going to bark. So here we are, created that, and we'll just say barks. So really simple. Don't worry, we're going to get really complicated here in a moment. Now what we're going to do is we're going to define our main method, which we've talked about previously. This is where all the execution occurs. And we come down here and we call for main to execute. Remember, even though we have these functions and classes and so forth and functions inside of these classes, we are not going to execute them. The first thing that's going to be executed is this guy down here because it's not a function. So inside of here, we can create a new dog object. Remember, I said I want to create Spot. How we create it is refer to it with the dog with the uppercase D, and then we're going to pass inside of it the name. You don't pass in self, that gets passed in there automatically. And let's say it's 66 and 26. We can then come in here and just call for Spot to bark just by doing this and R, and you can see Spot the dog barks, and it automatically threw Spot's name inside of there. And likewise, we can come in here and create as many different dogs as we would like. Let's say we wanted Bowser. We just come in here and go dog like this. And however, if we would go and say that we want Bowser to do something, so let's have Bowser bark, because we haven't defined a name for it, it's just going to say the dog barks. So there is a very, very quick rundown and the basics of object-oriented programming using Python. Now what I'm going to do is show you what are called getters and setters and explain exactly why they are useful. Now, getters and setters are going to be used to protect our objects from assigning bad field values to them, or also to provide improved output. So we're going to create another boring one here. We're going to create the Warriors here in a moment. Don't worry about it. So we'll create a class called Square. We, of course, are going to come in here and initialize this guy. And self, of course, is going to be inside of here. And we're going to have this be height. And we're going to put a default value of 0 inside of there, and we are also going to have width and 0 inside of there as well. We can then assign it to the actual shape object by getting the value that was passed in there for the height as well as the width, and then we are going to define a getter. Now what we need to do first is go property, and this is going to allow us to refer to these individual fields inside of here to get these values. We will then say height, and self is going to go in there automatically. And then we could do something like, to improve our output, you could do something like retrieving the height and just have that be something that gets printed on the screen whenever the user decides that they need the height. Then likewise, we could return the height value by going self and dot, and then you're going to put 2 underscores underneath of there, because this is going to be a private field. We're going to try to protect our data, and that is it. So this is going to be the function that's called anytime a user for your squares is going to require the value for the height. Now likewise, we are going to create a setter, and that is going to protect us from putting bad data inside of our squares. First thing we need to do is go at height and define this as our setter, and then define height self and the value that is going to be passed inside of here. Now let's say we want to protect height from receiving a bad value. For example, we want to make sure that the value passed in is a digit. What we could do to guarantee that that would work that way is we could say if value is digit. You've seen this function before. Well, if it is a digit, then what we want to do is store it inside of height. So to do so, we'll go self dot underscore 2 times, and height is going to be equal to the value that they sent in. If, however, they try to pass in a value that is not a digit, what we're going to say is please only enter numbers for height, and it will not assign the value in that situation. So hopefully you can see there how that is providing us a way for us to protect our data. Likewise, we're going to do exactly the same thing for width. So paste that in there. And then here we'll just change all these to width. So we'll say width, retrieving the width, change this to width, change this to width, this to width, again width, and width. Alright, so we have our getters and our setters all set up for both height and width. And now something that would be useful to do with our shape is to do something like get the area. So we will come in and we will create that guy. And here we will just return, and we're going to convert these from strings into integers. And we'll refer to them with 2 underscores and multiply that times, again, int and self dot 2 underscores and the height. Now we can come down here after we've defined that, and we can come into the main method and start creating everything. So main, and we'll create a square, and then we will just create an empty square object, and then we will use the getters and setters to set everything. So we could do something like height is equal to input and ask the user to enter the height. Likewise, we can come in and ask them to enter the width, and of course make sure you put your quotes inside of here. We can then call for our square object to assign the height. And what this guy up here does, what these guys do, this and then the property, is it allows us to refer to these values just as height. Otherwise, I'd have to come in here and put that there. But now, because we have properties set up here and this set up with setter, we can just refer to them the way that they are. Likewise, we are going to change or edit our width. And then we can also call for this information to print out on the screen. So we could go height and call a square again. And to get the height, call the getter. We could do it just like that. Likewise, we're going to also be able to come in and do the same exact thing with width and width. And then finally, we can also call the getArea function. So we come in and say the area is, and then to call that guy, we'll just go a square and getArea. And after this, of course, we want to call our main function to execute. And if we run it, you can see enter height. We could type in 12, enter width, 12. And you can see right here, retrieving the height, and we got 12. Retrieving the width, we got 12. And the final area is 144. So there's another rundown of another type of object that we can create inside of Python. And now it is time for us to enter and create our warriors and have them fight to the death. Okay, so this is going to be sample output from the program we are going to create. We're going to have a warrior called Sam and a warrior called Paul. Of course, they're going to be user defined. And you can see here, Sam is going to attack Paul and do a certain amount of damage. Both our warriors are going to be equipped with both a sword as well as a shield. And the attacks are going to be randomized. So a certain amount of an attack is going to, that is a random attack, is going to hit a shield, which is going to block a random amount of damage on our warrior. And they're basically going to take turns. Sam's going to attack Paul, Paul's going to attack Sam, Sam's going to attack Paul, and over again until one of the warriors dies and the other one is left victorious. You actually have enough knowledge to create this, what you see on the screen right now. That would be a heck of a challenge, and if you'd like to pause your video and go and see if you can make it, go for it. Otherwise, I'm going to give you a couple little hints here in regards to what we want to do. Well, basically, what we're going to need to do, at least as far as I see it, is we're going to have to create a warrior and a battle class, because we want to divide everything up just like we like to divide everything up with functions. And like I said before, warriors will have names. They're also going to have health, because we need to know how much, whenever one of the warriors dies, so we're going to have to decrement that. And they're going to have attack and block maximums, because we need to know how much damage and how much damage is going to be blocked and so forth and so on. So that's some of the things we know, attribute-wise. In regards to capabilities, they will have the capabilities or the methods to attack and block random amounts. So those are the attributes and the capabilities for our warriors, and it's just up to us to create those things. If we want to get more specific into the attack, what is going to happen is we are going to basically use a random function, and I think it would make sense. Random on its own is going to give us a value of 0.0 to 1.0, and I think that what we want to do is we want to multiply that times whatever the maximum attack is, and then probably add, well, times max attack, and that's going to give us a smaller percentage of max attack, and then maybe we would like to come in here and add 0.5 to it, just so the game doesn't go on for a lifetime. So it's something to think about. Likewise, block will use random as well, and also use the +5, and this will just be max block. Okay, so that's a rundown of how those two things are going to work. Then we're going to have our battle class, and it's going to have the capability of looping until one warrior dies. That's something we need to do. And then also warriors will each get a turn, and I'm just walking through the whole process of thinking how this is going to work to attack each other, just as you saw in the sample code right here. See, Sam attacks Paul, Paul attacks Sam, so forth and so on. So that's going to be handled inside of a loop, inside of a method of some sort or another. And then you're going to have another function that is basically going to handle the attack phase. So that function gets two warriors. One warrior attacks the other, and that's it, because we don't want to have repeat code. So basically this function is going to have one warrior attack another, and then inside of our looping structure we will then say, okay, the first warrior attacked the other one, now we want to call this function down here again and have that process repeat again. So one warrior attacks the other, and like we said up here, there's going to be a maximum attack and a maximum block that is going to be defined, and then we're going to basically figure out who's going to survive and who isn't going to survive. Also, I think it makes sense to have the attacks and blocks be integers, because that's the way our output is. See, it says 10 health, it doesn't say 10.5 health. So just something that I did there with our, what we were aiming to do. And aside from those tips right there, I think that pretty much narrows down exactly what we need to do. So once again, you can pause the video and create it. Otherwise, I'm going to come in here and show you just my example of how we're going to create it. So what do we want to do here? Well, we're going to need to import a couple different things. We're going to need to import random, because we are going to be using that. And I'm also going to import math, because I'm going to need to use a couple different math functions. Now down inside of here, we're going to create our warrior class. So we'll just go class and warrior. And of course, we're going to have to initialize our warrior. So we'll go init. And what's going to be passed inside of it? Well, we already defined that. We're going to have a name, and I'm going to give it just a default name of warrior. We're also going to have a health, which I'm going to give a default value of 0. We're going to have an attack maximum, which is also going to be 0. It's going to be a very weak warrior by default. And the block max, which is also going to be equal to 0. Then I just have to come in here and go self name is going to be the name they passed inside of it. Going to do the same for health, attack maximum, block maximum, and that's pretty good. Alright, so we got this out of the way. So let's go and get rid of all that stuff. Those are our attributes. Then what do we need to do? Well, we're going to have the capability to attack and block random amounts. So that means we need to create a method. So we'll go define, and let's just call it attack. Works well for me. And what this is going to do is randomly calculate the attack amount. So I'll just go attack amount is going to be equal to self, and that's going to be the attack maximum. And then I'll multiply that times random and random, and that's going to give us a value. Oh, put this inside of there. That's going to give us a value between 0 and 1, and just so the game doesn't go on for a lifetime, I'm going to increase whatever that is by 0.5. And then it's going to return that value. So, attack amount. Likewise, we're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing for block amount. So, come in here, and we'll just define this as block, and this is going to be block amount, which is going to be equal to block max. So, I just change this to block max. random 0.5. Everything else there looks perfectly fine. And then I'll just get the block amount and throw that inside of there. And that's it. So I got all the capabilities or the attributes of my warrior, as well as all of the capabilities or the methods for my warrior defined. And now what I need to do, well, let's get rid of this, let's get rid of this, and now we need to create our battle class. So we're going to go class, battle. Once again, we're going to come in here and have to initialize this. Well, actually, you know what? I don't even think I do. This basically is going to work great as just basically a utility class, which is going to have the capabilities to loop and then the capabilities to have the warriors fight against each other. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to go define start fight, and start fight, whenever it is called, it is going to be passed warrior 1 and warrior 2. What's going to happen inside of here? Well, we're going to continue looping until a warrior dies, and then we're going to switch back and forth as the warriors attack each other. So, since I don't know when, I know I need to loop, but I don't know for how long, I'm going to use a while true in that situation, just like we always do whenever we come to a situation in which we want to do that. And then I'm going to say if self get attack result, which is a function I'm going to create here in a second, and I'm going to pass in warrior 1 inside of there, and then I'm also going to pass inside of there warrior 2. So there they go. Likewise, I'm then going to say if I get a result sent back to me for game over, what does that mean? That means I'm going to print out on the screen game over, or I could just put, you know, whatever this result is, but whatever, that works fine. And then I'm going to break out of my while true loop. Likewise, now I need to do the absolute opposite using warrior 2 and warrior 1. So I'll come in here and just change this to 2 and change this to 1, and everything else can be exactly the same. And that leaves me to the creation of get attack result. Let's come down here out of the start fight guy, and this guy is not going to require the use of self. Everything that it needs is going to be passed inside of these attributes right here. In situations like this is truly what we would call a class method, meaning that it is not tied to any type of object. It has no need to refer to self. All of the information it is getting is going to be passed in the attributes. Doesn't need to use self. So what does that mean? That means it should be marked as a static method. Doesn't have to be. I'm going to get more into static methods in the next part of the tutorial. Just wanted to introduce that. But basically, what a static method is it is a method or a capability of the class. So let's say, for example, I just want to get into this for a second just to explain a little bit about static. Let's say we are creating dog objects, and one of the methods inside of here, or let's say one of the attributes is dog count. And dog count is going to be a field or an attribute that is going to be incremented every single time a new dog object is created. There's also going to be a method inside of our dog object that is going to be called increment dog count. And all this guy is going to do is increment or increase the value for dog count by 1. Alright, so that is the whole purpose. Every single time a dog object is created, this method is going to be called, and this is going to be increased by 1. Well, you may think to yourself, can a real-world dog object count? The answer to that is no. Anytime you create a method or you have an attribute that isn't directly related to a real-world object that you were trying to model, in that situation, that thing should be static. And that's just a brief overview of static. If you're confused by it at all, don't worry about it. Next part of the tutorial, I'll get more into how static works. But either way, we're going to make this a static method. And we're going to come in here and define get attack result. It is going to be passed warrior 1 and warrior 2. I'm going to call them warrior A and warrior B because 2 and 1 are going to be switching back and forth, and I want to avoid any confusion. And now what I need to do is just figure out what the attack amount's going to be for this guy. So let's go in here. Let's get rid of that. We can refer to these two guys down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say warrior A attack amount is going to be equal to warrior A attack. And I'm going to call this guy up here, this one right here, and it's going to tell me what the attack amount is going to be. Okay, a random number. Very good. Then I need to come in here and also find out what warrior B's block amount is going to be equal to. And that is just going to be warrior B, and I'm going to call block on it. And it's going to give me that random value. Then what I need to do is find out what the damage to warrior B is going to be. And remember that I want this to be set as an integer. If I don't do this, it's going to have it be a float. And how I figure it out is I say warrior A attack amount minus warrior B block amount. And that is how we'll figure out how much damage the warrior is going to be taking. Likewise, we're going to be continually looping until warrior B in this situation's health is going to be equal to 0. So we want to find out what the health is, and how we find that out is go warrior B and ask for its health, and then subtract from it the damage to warrior B. And once again, the health amount is going to be up here inside of our warrior. See? And we set that, and that's going to be decremented for us. If you're having a hard time following, get the code in the description and put that in front of you. It'll be easier to follow here. Now all that's left for us to do is to come up here and print out these messages. Alright, so we know how the warriors are going to interact, and we just have to print out messages. So we'll say print, and we're going to say attacks and deals damage. And we'll call format for this, and we'll say warrior A dot name. Put a comma inside of there, and then we're going to come down here so it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. And then we'll say warrior B and get warrior B's name, and then we want to get the damage to the warrior, and that's going to be printed out. Likewise, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to tell the warrior how much it's down. So remember, we come up here, fall attack Sam and deal 7 damage, and then it's going to say Sam is down to a certain amount of health. So we'll come in here and we will model that. So here we're going to get that is down to this health, and once again we're going to say format, and here we'll go warrior B name, and then we'll go warrior B and get warrior B's health. Now we have to handle the situation in which we have to pass back game over or some other result that's going to allow us to end our looping. So we have to define if warrior B's health is going to be less than 0. So we'll say warrior B and health. If it is less than or equal to 0, well, in that situation, we want to say that the warrior's dead. So, like this, has died, and the other warrior is victorious. Call format on this, and then basically just put the names in there again. So warrior B, name, and then warrior A, name, and then likewise, we want to come down here and return game over. Otherwise, we want to say else, and we can return anything. It doesn't matter what it is, because we're only looking for game over. We'll just say fight again, just as a result we can throw inside of there. Well, now we get to test to see if I have any bugs in my code. Well, we're going to create main. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I will definitely answer them. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to create 2 warriors. So let's create Maximus. I don't know if I spelled that right, but that's how he spells it, so that's good. And we're going to create a warrior, and Maximus is going to be the name for our warrior. He is going to have a total health of 50, he is going to have an attack value of 20, and he is going to have a block value of 10. Remember, those are maximums. And we're going to have him fight up against Galaxon. I don't know. There's Galaxon and Galaxon, and let's make them be equal to each other. Then what we need to do is, since we have our warriors set up, we need to create our battle object, and we'll just go battle like this. And then quite simply, to start the battle, we're going to say battle, and we're going to call start fight, and then we just pass in Maximus, and then we will pass in Galaxon, and that is it. Nice and neat. We know when we look at main, we know we're creating 2 objects and that are going to be warrior types. We're going to create a battle, we're going to start our fight, and then the fight's going to end. And we'll call main, and we'll see if I have any errors in my code. Run. Nope, don't have any errors in my code as far as I can tell. Let's take a closer look. And it says Maximus attacks Galaxon, deals 18 damage. Galaxon is down to 32 health. Galaxon attacks Maximus, does 6 damage, and so forth and so on. And who is the final winner? Maximus attacks Galaxon, deals 19 damage. Galaxus is down to -9 health, Galaxon has died, and Maximus is victorious. Game over. Well, there you go, guys. Hopefully that was fun. I'm going to continue doing some more object-oriented programming in the next part of the tutorial and do more fun examples. And like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.